Hey guys, and welcome to my channel. My name is Sophie and I'm an illustrator. I graduated last year and I've been working as a freelance illustrator ever since. Today I'm going to quickly show you my process of how I create my digital illustrations in Photoshop because I thought it could be quite interesting and I quite like watching videos like this. So the very first step I do is I do everything by hand before I put it onto the computer. So I'll do some thumbnails and some ideas. I usually do quite a lot more than this, but because this is just a portfolio piece, it didn't take as much prep work. I had a piece I worked on last year of a man sitting by his desk, and the piece was looking quite dated and not so much like my current work. So because of that, I kind of decided that I would update it and do this new one with this girl sitting at her desk. So I kind of already knew the basic of it. I got some Pinterest ideas, I got some layouts, I got some inspiration, and I just started thumbnailing straight away. And as you can see, the circled one is the one that I've decided to go with. Before I do that, I'm sorry I forgot to mention, I also just do a brainstorm of like keywords I want to show in my piece. So for this one I've just put cozy, studio, plants, nature, relaxing. I want it to be quite a calm image. I don't want it to be too busy. So once I finished getting those sketches sorted, once I've done my sketches and I've got my idea sorted, I will then go on to the rough stage. Okay, I'm sorry about that random pause. I got called by someone trying to sell me solar panels for the house that I don't own. But yeah, back to this. Once I get the elements that I want to do, I'll go back into them and kind of focus on little bits of it that I maybe want to improve a little bit before I go to the rough stage. So here I'm just sketching out the girl. I kind of know what chair I want, just getting little bits more secure in my mind, I guess, before I go to the roughs. As you can see, Netflix is on in the background. Usually I'll listen to podcasts or have like an old Netflix show, something I've seen before. I won't have like the energy to concentrate on something, but I hate working in the silence. So I always have something in the background. And I think it actually isn't Netflix, I think it might be BBC iPlayer, some series. I'm not even sure. I usually watch documentaries. But yeah, so I just get the sketch done, again with a pencil, roughly. Like, no one ever looks in my sketchbook, so I don't have any pressure to make them neat. It's just for myself, helping me with like the next stage. And then I go on to the rough stage. Now I, to be completely honest, usually use about 5 sheets of paper before I get to this final rough, but here it is. And also I will first draw it out really lightly with pencil and then I will erase like the mistakes and change it from there. But for the sake of this video, I just showed you the rough that I'm actually going to be using and me doing the finishing touches of it, because that's just easier. But you know, gotta be honest, like the rough sketch isn't always how I want it to be straight away. The reason I go over darker, as you can see, like the lines are quite dark. Once I've done the lighter stage, I go over with darker lines purely because my scanner's quite old and I want all the lines to show up quite clearly on my scanner. Like even though I like boost the contrast and lower the brightness of it, I still want it to be quite clear. So here's just me finishing off the sketch. I use cartridge paper for my sketchbook and I just use any pencil that I have to hand, usually HB or 2B. I don't like using anything too dark, like I said, just because I like to erase it. And also I don't want it to be smudgy for when it goes into the scanner, because I'm using my family's printer scanner, which is not that great quality, but it's fine for roughs. So I'll go back to the sketchbook sometimes and I'll get like the little layouts and just make sure that everything's to plan. And if you hear weird noises in the background, we're having building done on our roof, so that's probably what that is. But yeah, so I just finished the final sketches, and I think also one thing to note is when I'm doing client roughs, like this is what I would do. I would make this rough and then I would scan it in, change the contrast a little bit and send that off to a client. But because I'm doing this for myself, I've added quite a bit of shading in, just so I can like make a mental note of where the dark shades are going to be. But I probably wouldn't do that if I was for a client. I rarely put shade in because I just think it can get a little bit confusing. The only reason I would put shade into a client one would be to make it a little bit more clear if I thought that maybe the lines weren't super obvious. But yeah, so this is just how I make a rough sketch. And I actually love this process because I can just have some noise on in the background, and especially when I'm doing it for a portfolio piece, like usually nobody will ever see this stage. So it doesn't matter how many mistakes I make, and that is quite nice when you don't have the pressure. Okay, so here it is. So there's my rough sketch. I'll have scanned it in, I put it into Photoshop, I lower the brightness and I increase the opacity to make the lines a lot more clear. And then I didn't mean opacity, increase the contrast and lower the brightness. That's what I do. And then I just change the opacity and I lower that down of the whole image. It's just in the background. And then the next step that I do is I use the pen tool. A lot of people presume that because my work has a lot of shapes in it that I use Illustrator and that all my work is vector. I do use Illustrator on occasion. I make the shapes sometimes in Illustrator if they're more complicated, just because the pen tool I kind of prefer over there. But most of the time it's all done in Photoshop, and I like Photoshop because I'm so used to using it, and the textures, like, it enables me to use my own textures and give it a bit more depth. So yeah, all my work is done in Photoshop. And here is me just using the pen tool and just giving you a bit of an example of what I would do. So it's literally how I used to do collaging, because I used to make all these traditionally. So I do the same process. So I'll draw it out with the pen tool, and then I will put the colour over that, and then I'll put my texture over the top of that, and I do it bit by bit. You kind of get into the swing of it when you're used to it, and everybody has their own little way of working, but I just thought it'd be interesting to give people a bit of an idea of how I make my work. So each bit is layered, and there probably is a quicker way to do the things that I do, honestly, but I don't know, like, maybe my process will change. Everything is evolving, isn't it? But this is how I love to work at the moment, and I really enjoy it. I find it quite therapeutic to do it bit by bit. So, yep. So once that's all done, I will continue that for the whole piece, and I'll just have lots of different layers. Yeah, my poor computer, he makes a lot of noise and he's very sad. But I'll have a lot of layers, and then I will just add the colour and add the texture. So, here you can see the rough sketch. So the opacity is slowed down a little bit, and I'm just going to show you the layers of colour over the top of this so you can kind of understand that a little bit more. And then once it's completely finished, I just delete the sketch layer completely, because it does change a little bit. Like, sometimes I'll increase the sizes, I'll play around with the layout, but I have that ability to do that once I kind of work on it. Maybe I'll find out the sketch isn't perfect and there needs to be some changes, but usually I kind of stick mostly to the sketch, as it just kind of helps me, because I've already played around with proportions by hand. I find that very difficult to do on the computer, so I find doing all your proportion drawings and all of that stuff is so much easier to do by hand. And then just doing the colour and the texture, that's the only bit I do on Photoshop. And I think people would probably quite enjoy this way of working if you like working by hand, because I love drawing and I love, like, sketching things out, and I think a lot of people do just presume, oh, it's digital, it's just done like straight onto a computer, like there's no drawing involved, but yeah, there's definitely drawing involved. So yeah, this is pretty much the process of it. I mean, I'm just going to show you now something I do like to do, and that is when I have certain elements that are like slightly more complicated, or I want to get into more detail and I maybe want them to be like quite high quality, I will do them separately. And in this case I'm doing all the plants separately, and there's two reasons for that, like I just said, and also I may want to use the plants as like individual portfolio pieces, so I want them to be slightly bigger than just tiny little plants. So yeah, I do them on separate pages. So I just use the colour palette that I've already made, make the plants, and then once the plant is completely done, I'll just merge the layers of that file and I'll drag it into my original artwork file. Sometimes there's little messy bits I need to delete first, but mostly I just drag it in. And I drop it, I lower the opacity, and I resize it up to my image. So it really is like a bit of a digital collage, the way I work, which I guess isn't for everybody, but I find it quite enjoyable. And it gives me a lot of scope to change things as well. So if people do need changes, I can make those changes quite easily. Whereas if it was all traditional collage, yeah, I would not like to be making those changes. So this is why I really love Photoshop, for that reason. Because I feel so sorry for people that do traditional print. I don't feel sorry for them, I absolutely love traditional print, but I feel sorry for them in the respect that if somebody asks for changes, it's so stressful to think that you have to change your whole print, and I think that's why people are leaning to making changes digitally, just because printing is such a lovely craft and I absolutely love it. I wish I had a print room, and as you can see, all my textures are made by hand-printed textures, but yeah, it just makes it a lot easier to change when it's on Photoshop. So I just play around with the layout, get it on, and that is that pretty much. That is how I make the pieces. So I hope that was slightly helpful. I find it kind of interesting to get into people's heads and see what they do, because it's not always what you think. Maybe this is exactly how my work looks like it's made, I don't know, but yeah, thought it would be pretty interesting to show you. So here is the final piece, and well, it's not actually the final piece, I don't know why I said that. It's like the progress that I've got on it so far. I'm probably going to go and change some of the colours and rejig the stuff before I actually print it out, but just for the sake of the process video, I thought I'd show you where I got right now, because this kind of answers the question of how I make the work. But I'm also going to quickly end on showing you some other pieces, because all of my work is done the same way. So this is the Dots profile. I was going to show you my website, but for some reason it wasn't loading. So here's the Dots portfolio site. So each of these was done exactly the same way, drawing it up, layering it, adding the colour, adding the texture, and playing around with the tones. So this is a businesswoman holding an iPad. I know the new iPad doesn't have a notch. I kind of did it based on one of the photos that people came up with beforehand, but oh well, I've kept it there just because it didn't look like an iPad without that, so yeah. But I quite enjoyed that piece, and again, it's all done exactly the same way. And it really enables you to get really bright colours and also show the texture. So it kind of looks printed. I think it does look digital in my work, but I like the fact I can keep a bit of a printed texture in there. And I mean, I really do hope this was helpful for some people. I think in the future I would like to do some maybe more in-depth tutorials on making your own textures and making your own print, like texture brushes, and maybe even like more specific ways on how to use Photoshop, because that wasn't really what this video was about, but I could do that in the future. And yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please leave this a like and what am I talking about? I'm not very good at this YouTube thing. Please like this video and subscribe. It really means so much to me. I'm so new at this, so every time I get a subscriber it makes me so happy. So I would love if you would like to come along with me. I'll be making videos every week. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Bye guys!